Everyone, this is Samantha T, and welcome to another Fresh Fiction Video Book Club. Today's guest, I'm so excited about. This is an area that we haven't delved a lot into, but we have a USA best-selling, internationally best-selling author, Zoje Stage, and she writes psychological thrillers and horrors. And we are going to be jumping into the world, revisiting actually the world of a sociopath. But before we get into that, officially welcome, and I'm so happy that you're able to join us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get started with something easy. And before we get into some of the dark elements here, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you first get started writing? And of course, there is one of the famous cats.
It's one of the yes, so I live in Pittsburgh with my 3 cats. There's one of them. The other 2 are probably here somewhere. I started writing like a lot of writers, like when I was a child. I wasn't necessarily writing fiction, but I was writing poetry. And then when I got a little older, I was writing stage plays, and then I was writing screenplays, and I pursued various film interests for a long time. And honestly, I came to writing novels a little bit late because I was very intimidated by the thought of writing a novel. It seemed beyond my capabilities. But eventually I gave it a try. I worked really hard. Baby Teeth was actually the 6th book I'd written. So it took some practice, but I eventually figured it out.
Do you think was that final motivation to get you to really start writing the novel then? You said that you had worked in some other areas. What was that stumbling block that you had to overcome?
One of the things was I had film dreams for a long time. I wanted to be a writer director. And then at some point, like in late 2012, like I really had to accept my film dreams were not going to happen, but I still wanted to channel like all of my creativity and the things I'd learned making do it yourself independent films. And thinking of a novel as a film was actually a thing that helped me bridge that gap because I could think of it in terms of writing the script, but also directing and editing and acting. And these were all things I had more experience with than writing long fiction. And then it still was a learning process. I think writing novels is very hard for anyone. I know some people miraculously publish their first novel, but I don't know how they do that. I needed time to figure it out how to do it.
And I think that's really interesting too, simply with this type of genre, because I enjoy a good scary thriller movie, and most of the horror has been with film. How do you continue to build that type of suspense and those gotcha moments in a novel as opposed to that immediate reaction that somebody might have when it's on the screen?
I actually think my film background helps a lot with that because I think of those kind of little moments where the audience sees something. So sometimes I plant things like that in the text in the novel itself of a little thing. The other thing that I always do is I always leave unanswered questions. There might be big questions and there might be little questions that a character is pursuing for each chapter, but always try to leave some things unanswered so that readers are saying, oh, what's that thing that they're wondering about or that they're going to do next? And I use that device a lot because I find it helpful on multiple levels because it can be for big picture issues with the book and it can be going down all to teeny tiny levels. So it works on a lot of different levels.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense because, again, from the screen aspect, I can sit there and cover my eyes and it'll just move on and you can hear and you're absorbing what else is happening. But with the book, you can't just put it aside. You've got to constantly be going through it. Okay, what is that next thing? Whoa, wait, what's going to happen next? Ooh, and as you're putting those different questions in, how are you building that level of suspense and the different gotchas into the story? Do you have these things already plotted out? Is it coming naturally, or is it a series of multiple edits that you go back and layer those elements in addition to the basic story?
I mean, I think for me, it's honestly mostly an organic process. I'm not a plotter. I'm not a true pantser, but I'm a mostly pantser. Before I start writing a novel, I tend to know something that's going to happen in the beginning of the book, something that's going to happen in the middle, and maybe not the final chapter, but at least the resolution of what the character's main arc is. so that I'm always writing toward that point, and I find that very helpful. But then along the way, I'm just making discoveries. And when I make new discoveries, sometimes I will go back and alter things. I know some people, they just want to write the book, they don't want to edit as they go along, but I've actually started editing as I go along now, so that when I get ideas about something and I think, oh, this is going to maybe impact what the character was thinking in chapter 3, I can go back and fix that while it's fresh in my mind. So it's very much a discovery process, which I find that's the magical part of writing a novel, because I'm finding it. It's like, where did it come from? I don't know. We're finding it one day at a time.
Well, Zoe, the other thing is I'm fascinated with this story for Dear Hannah because you're coming back and revisiting characters from baby teeth, and it's several years later. Hannah is now grown up. And a lot of times when we're reading books, we want to know whatever happened to certain characters. But a lot of times it's, hey, we want to dip into their happily ever after. It's a different take with these types of books. Not necessarily the classic happily ever after, but you also have so much dark humor in this. And so, what was your pull to come back and revisit with Hannah?
There were a couple of things. Since Baby Teeth was published, I have had people ask me, is there going to be a sequel? It's just been an absolutely constant question. And for, I don't know, at least 2, 3 years, I was adamant that I was not going to write a sequel because I just considered Baby Teeth as done. If I did Baby Teeth 2, it wouldn't be as good. People would be disappointed. And then some point during the pandemic, we're all sitting at home watching true crime. At least I was sitting at home watching true crime. And I like to watch things from a very psychological perspective. I like to see, how did these people end up in this position so that these horrible things are happening to them? And I came across an episode where I thought, oh, that's so interesting to me. Could that be Hannah as an adult? And I actually ruled it out. I ruled it out pretty quickly that no, that absolutely could not be Hannah as an adult. Maybe I could make another story about that someday. But that was actually the moment then that I started asking myself, then who is Hannah as an adult? And once I started thinking about that, I really wanted to know what Hannah's story was. So that was the first time for myself. Like, it wasn't the readers asking. I really wanted to know, okay, who is Hannah now? And then I got really excited about writing it. And this was a very fun book to write. I like the dark humor in it. I like the writing the letters. Yeah, I had a lot of fun writing this book.
Okay, so with it being okay, so I'm not sure exactly how to ask that. It's one of those, okay, are you twisted a little bit? Because you're writing about twisted characters. She's a sociopath. There's dark humor in this. Even just the kickoff where she's a phlebotomist, and that way she's getting a little bit of that thrill of when she really needs to hurt somebody. Oh, okay, you're causing a little pain there, and yet you're having fun while writing it. So, which is a good thing. But what is it that then you're doing to get in the right mindset for that? You want to have it where she's a relatable character, right? Because otherwise, that's that protagonist, and have her where you're pulling people in. So, what are you doing so that you're having fun and you're enjoying the process, but still writing a dark and twisty book? And with those different elements, do you find you have to do something special to get into the right mindset, or
Yes, sadly, no, it just comes completely naturally. I think the very first thing I knew about Hannah was that she was a phlebotomist. And it's once I knew that's what she would do as an adult and she could hurt people a little bit and, oh my God, my cat. And she could have this experience with blood and do this stuff. It's developed from there, but it's actually shockingly easy for me to get into the mindset of even my darkest characters. And I think in part it comes from empathy because I never see them as being pure evil or pure whatever. It's, I understand what their motivation is. It's, they tend to be wounded people who are trying to do something. And I understand why they're wounded and I understand why life is a struggle for them. So I have a lot of sympathy and empathy for them. And I think that's actually part of what helps me write these characters so that they aren't just pure evil, that there's something that people can relate to about them. And if nothing else, it's that I related to them as I was writing it.
How much did you have to go back to your notes with from baby teeth as you were putting together Dear Hannah?
Yeah, I did not go back to my notes from Baby Teeth. I think there was maybe a couple things where I just needed to look up some logistics, but it was also part of why I wanted to have Dear Hannah take place. I think it's 17 years later, so that it could really be its own standalone book, so that it really was not going to be Baby Teeth 2.0, which I know some people wanted that. They probably would have preferred it. But for me, the adventure was seeing who would she be later on in life and how does her life develop over decades.
One of the best reviews I heard about this when I was doing some of my initial research was someone who said this is the best kind of book because at the end of it you just want everybody else to have read it because there's so many twists and gotchas and oh my gosh, this book is just so effing crazy that you want to talk about it with everyone because they're all going to have a different take on it.
Yeah. I gotta say, there were times when I was working on the book where I'm like, I don't think I can get away with this. People are going to kill me. They're going to be like, oh my God, you cannot write about this like this. These are sensitive subjects. People are going to be really offended. But part of what I do is to see how far can I push something. And if it's logical for the character, then I'm going to do it and see if it works.
Mhm. The other thing that I thought was interesting, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about it, is another book that you have coming up in the same world. And I've got to look at the notes so I get the title of this right. My Underslumber Bumble Beast.
Here, I'll help you. My end is
Right there. So tell our readers and listeners a little bit about this book and how that evolved from Dear Hannah and Baby Teeth.
People might remember in Baby Teeth, Hannah has a favorite book that her dad reads to her at night. And it becomes like this really important part of the plot where she's making these little potato creatures. And then later at the end of near the end, the family is making this little beanbag toy for her. So the Underslumber Bumblebees become like a really important part of the story. And initially, when I was just first writing Baby Teeth, I just wanted to have this moment where the father was reading a book to her. And I was like, what can I use? There's like copyright issues. I can't use somebody else's book. I had a short story that I had written for children and never did anything with it called My Underslumber Bumblebeast. So I pulled some little pieces from that. And then after Baby Teeth was finished, I was like, you know what? I really want My Underslumber Bumblebeast to be a real book. And I rewrote it to make it a little bit more cohesive. I had tried to convince people in publishing that it should be a real book. They were like not having it. So I knew like when I revisited Hannah as an adult, that it's like I wanted to revisit her little creatures. And it's like they're still influencing her. It's like it's one of the main ties, I think, to Baby Teeth is that she's influenced by these ghoulish little creatures and this book from her childhood. So once again, I tried to find a traditional publisher. People in publishing were not into it, and for the reason that children's literature tends to be in very specific categories. Like a picture book is a certain number of pages and a certain number of words, and an early chapter book is a certain way, and a chapter book. And it was a little bit of a hybrid. Typically, something that's going to be a chapter book is not fully illustrated. Commercial publishing thinks of it in terms of where do you put it on a shelf? Where do you put it on the shelf in a bookstore? And so they thought it was too problematic for being too wonky. So I ended up finding an independent publisher. So one of the things that Doug Morano of Bad Hand Books seems to specialize in now is publishing the wayward lost books of other authors where they can't find homes for them, and he makes homes for them. So yeah, I'm so happy it's finally going to be a real book. Very excited.
I just think it's so fascinating. And I love how you're able to take this story that was part of these other novels, but the fact that you are now releasing a children's book, an illustrated children's book from a couple of psychological thriller books with sociopaths. And it's, oh, yes, let's see how we can transition with this.
Initially, I think way back when, I thought, oh, this would be a book that like fans of Baby Teeth would like because it's like a tie-in book. But then by the time that I was really working on the book and revising it, I was like, no, you know what? This is a legit children's book. It is really meant for readers 7 to 10. And I think adults will enjoy it too. It's not a horror book. I like to describe it as adorably ghoulish, much more whimsical than what I usually write. It's much gentler than what I usually write. But I think it has like little elements that would appeal to both children and adults and won't scare anybody too much.
I also imagine that one must have been just as much fun to write, just from a different aspect of it, really.
I was just doing a little written interview today, and one of the questions was, you've written for adults and for children, which do you prefer? And honestly, I prefer writing for adults because I can really do a character very in depth. But I like to have the opportunity of doing something completely different, something that's a little more lighthearted, something where I can like really just let my imagination go wild. That's very fun. I think as a writer, for me, it's a little bit of a palate cleanser in between all my dark books. So I hope I get more opportunities to write some whimsical things in the future because I do to just let my imagination go and see what happens.
One of the other things, and I don't want to spend too much time on it, but that you had written another essay a while back about how Baby Teeth just completely changed your life when it was released. It was more than just, oh, hey, this is fantastic. I've finally gotten my first novel published. This was life altering in
Yeah.
some ways. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, no, baby teeth absolutely completely changed my life. So prior to selling baby teeth, I was actually on federal disability. Like Suzette in baby teeth, I have Crohn's disease and my health had been very bad for a number of years and I was on disability. And I was poor. I was absolutely poor. My rent and utilities were $657 a month, and my disability was $647 a month. So it's like I was getting SSI and Medicaid and Medicare. I had all of that. When I initially had this idea of what it would be like to publish a book, I tried to do research to find out how much does a book sell for? Because honestly, it's really hard to get information about this stuff. I'm like, how much does a book sell for? And the information I could get was like, oh, maybe between 5,000 and 20,000 for a traditional publisher. And in my mind at that time of being really poor, I was like, wouldn't that be great if every few years, maybe I could sell a novel and I would be able to buy all of the things that food stamps doesn't cover? Food stamps doesn't cover a lot of stuff that you need in your life, like, I don't know, shoes and bras and all your toilet paper and like all your other stuff. So that was like my very naive idea about it without really knowing how do you sell a book. So truly when Baby Teeth sold and like the day that my then agent called me about it was the most shocking day of my entire life. It still is the most shocking day of my entire life. And it took a couple years to fully appreciate just what Baby Teeth did for me. I live in a house now, but I have a completely different life. And I would not have had that life without Baby Teeth.
What do you think has been the most shocking or surprising thing then since you started publishing?
I mean, in a way, I hate to get all negative, but one of the surprising things was how unreliable and up and down the business itself is. Baby Teeth did very well, and there was a lot of buzz for it. And I still had an incredibly difficult time trying to sell my second book. It was really hard. And so the industry has just continued to be up and down. And it's not that I necessarily thought, oh, you get your first book published and you're in, it's all going to work out, it's going to be great. But I think I did not expect it to be quite so up and down. So that was very unexpected. And especially to have come from being quite poor and on disability, and now I'm not on disability, I have to support myself now. This is imperative. I need to be able to keep writing and selling books. So it's a little bit stressful in that sense and a little bit unexpected. So yeah.
So now knowing that too, as you wander around through life, are you constantly looking at, oh, see, now this would make a good basis for another thriller? Or are you making up stories as you're like encountering and observing people around? Or is it all just springing naturally?
I think my process is that I'm a sponge and that I just absorb things. I don't necessarily always think about it, but I absorb things. I watch a lot of documentaries because I like to watch real people, watch all sorts of police procedurals. I love like British police procedurals. So it's like I'm always reading or writing or watching stuff or encountering people and thinking about things, and it just becomes this thing. Like it grows in my head, and then at some point I'm like, I want to write about a person who has this particular kind of personality or issue. And then if I trace it back, it's, oh yeah, I watched 5 documentaries or something that had similar kind of things and it inspired me. But there's never like just one thing that's, oh, that's it. I'm going to write that story. And sometimes in the news, like you hear individual stories, it's, oh, that would be a great story. But I always think, oh, 50 other writers are going to write that. So I don't do it.
Let's switch over to what we call our fresh fiction facts. These are meant to be a series of rapid fire questions, answers hopefully off the top of your head. Okay. I know it's scary, right? What is your favorite writing fuel? What keeps you going?
Okay, I used to, and I don't do this anymore. I used to just eat M&Ms nonstop. I ate so many M&Ms, I became slightly allergic to chocolate and I had to stop. But if I could, I would still eat M&Ms all the time as my writing fuel, but I had to stop.
Yeah, allergic to chocolate would be a bad thing. Yeah. What is one luxury item or unnecessary product that you now just cannot live without?
This is so silly. But so I've had this thing like since selling my books that I'm very bad at celebrating. I just don't have celebrations and I don't have routines for things. So I've started a thing where when I sell a book, I buy a pair of shoes, and typically they're a pair of custom Converse. So I'm working on my sneaker collection.
What is your favorite pair out of those then?
Oh gosh, it's hard to say. The second pair that I got, they're black, gray, and white, and I actually got hashtag baby teeth embroidered on the side. Yeah, that was a bit indulgent. Yeah, no, I like all of them. They're super comfortable. That's why I keep buying them. I can't help myself. And I need to branch out on my colors so that they go with more of my wardrobe.
Does that mean that you're pretty much only getting like the black and the grays and
No, the first pair I got, because it was the first time I realized, oh, you can like custom design your own Converse. So it's one panel is zebra, and then it's like olive green and blue gray. And I was like designing, like you can pick the different colors for the eyelets and for what the sole looks like. I went all out. So they're actually very colorful and go with nothing or everything, depending on what your perspective is.
I had a pair of pink lace ones at one point, and I loved those things. I wore them until they were just literally falling apart, and I still don't think I got rid of them for quite some time because I'm like, I can probably just get a couple more wears out of them. Why not? Why not? So, with whom would you want to be stuck in an elevator with?
I was asked this question once before, and my answer was I don't want to be stuck in an elevator with anybody ever. When I was a child, I was like 9 years old. My sister must have been around 11, and we were in some relative's apartment building, and we got stuck in the elevator. And it was just the two of us, and it opened, and it's just like a brick wall. We were kids, and we were terrified. We were terrified, and we didn't know, what do we do? Do we push the help button? What do we do? So my answer to that, I do not want to be stuck in an elevator again. No, thank you.
Let me
No.
put a spin on it then. Who would you, if you were stuck, since you had with your cousin, who would you not want to be stuck in an elevator with?
Okay, I'm going to pick somebody I want to be stuck in an elevator with just so I can talk to them. How about that?
Okay.
I can have a conversation with them. So I'm like obsessed with Billie Eilish. So I'd love to be stuck with Billie Eilish in an elevator so I could talk to her.
Yep. Yeah. Once you're trapped, then it forces the conversation, right?
Wait, it's like, yeah. And she has to be there while I go, Billie, I love you so much.
What is the most unnecessary thing that you've ever bought online or through the TV?
Buy so much stuff online, it's not even funny. I like shop continuously online, and one could argue that most of it is not very necessary. Let's see, what would be the least necessary? The sad truth is sometimes I get indulgent ideas of something I'm going to do for the garden or something like that, and I buy things, and then it's, oh, it really doesn't work. and then it just ends up in the basement. I hate wasting money, but yeah, I'm a little bit addicted to shopping online now.
What sucked as a kid but is now awesome as an adult?
Sleeping.
Oh gosh, yeah. Can never get down for a nap, and now it's, oh man.
Yeah, yeah. When you're a kid, you don't want to go to bed and you don't want to miss out on anything. And now I would just kill for a good night's sleep. 8 hours of sleep, I would just kill for it.
Is there an author where you just have to read all of their work? Get the new book as soon as it comes out, read their entire backlist.
I don't think there's a single author who I've read all of their backlist, but there are definitely authors who I love to read, like Rachel Harrison, Katrina Ward, Lisa Jewell, Tana French, Josh Mallerman. Like, there's a bunch of people who I really look forward to their books. And I know some people like they delve into a person's library and read everything by a person, but I'm so scattered in the way that I read that I just read a bunch of people rather than reading one person. And maybe eventually I'll get caught up and have read everything that they've written, but I have not yet.
What is something that can immediately take you out of a story or a movie?
That I'm reading, something that I'm reading.
Mhm.
If something seems incredibly illogical, like if it's something I know about and I'm like, okay, that just absolutely wouldn't happen that way. It drives me crazy.
Would you rather go back in time and meet your ancestors or forward and meet descendants?
I'm not going to have any descendants. It's so sad. I think my sister and I are the end of the line. So I guess I will go back in time because yeah, I don't know anything about any of them. Yeah, we'll go back in time.
If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
It would say I'm very complex and you might not understand me. And also I'm very bad at starting conversations in public when I'm like with people I don't know. And please be direct. That's what I would say.
What is your most dog-eared copy of a book? The one that you just keep going back to, be it either for pleasure or for research.
First of all, I don't dog ear my books. I'm one of those people that will not fold the pages. I also, maybe this is weird, I don't really reread books. I don't have a lot of books that I've reread. I know some people are like really into that and they like revisit the same book every year, a couple of years. I'm trying to think if there's any I've read more than once or twice. I can't think of any.
Okay. Mm. Okay. What is your homemade remedy for a hangover?
I've never had a hangover.
Awesome.
I've also really never been drunk because I really don't drink. So here's why I don't drink. I have two very good reasons for why I've never been drunk. When I was a teenager, I had a phobia about vomiting. Like it was a
Oh,
serious
yeah.
phobia. So I never did it. And then as an adult, when I realized you actually don't have to drink to the point of vomiting, I thought alcohol is basically empty calories. And for the empty calories, I want chocolate. So I eat chocolate.
Yeah.
That's my
I can relate to that. Okay. Okay. What is something that you own a ridiculous amount of other than books and other than Converse sneakers?
cat toys. Gazillions and gazillions of cat toys. Like way too many cat toys. They only play with six of them, and I have 400. Yeah.
Yeah, and I get the cat toys, but then mine just becomes fascinated with the roll or the ball of aluminum foil. It's okay. Never mind all the other money I'm spending. It's
Yeah.
that's what's going to gather your attention. Great.
Yeah.
What's the thing on your to-do list that you just keep moving?
God, there's so many things. Okay, there's various appointments that I'm not doing. Oh, I've been meaning to rub the bathroom floor with spick and span. Haven't done that. Yeah, there's any number of household things and like just basic adulting things that I just keep putting off.
Okay, going back in time, what was the your favorite field trip that you ever went on?
Okay. I actually remember this out when I don't even remember what grade we were in, but we went to Laurel Caverns, which is a cave system here in Western Pennsylvania. So I think that was my first time going like down into a cave, and it was really cool.
As readers and listeners, the other important question is we always want to know what's next. What are you working on now?
So I'm in the early stages of a novel. It's going very slowly. I often start my novels very slowly, like painstakingly slowly. And I'm still at the point where I'm not absolutely positive it's going to work. So I can't say anything about it because I'm like, what if I tell you about this book and then everybody's waiting like a year or two and I'm like, oh yeah, it didn't work. I had to scrap it. So yeah, I'm just too superstitious. But I did start something and I hope it works.
With that, then, where is the best place for our readers and listeners to keep up with you and find out what's going on when you are ready to share those details?
Yeah, so I'm everywhere on social media. I'm still on Twitter. I will always call it Twitter. My handle there is at Zushka. I'm on Instagram quite a bit, which I think is Zoya.stage/_. Those are probably my two most frequent social media things, but I also always update things on my blog, which is I think Zoya's blogger. Stage, whatever it is. TikTok, really, I'm everywhere. If you ever really wanted to know where is she, you could just Google my name, and I'm sure one of those social media things will pop up, and then it will lead you to all the others.
Well, Zoya, it was so great talking with you this evening, but stick around for the happy hour with our readers. And I want to remind everyone, be sure and check out Dear Hannah so you can find out a little bit more about what's going on with this particular sociopath and read more books by Zoya Stage.
Thank you so much.